Hello there, and welcome to another After Build Report review. Today I'm going to be looking at a kit that's got a lot of hype surrounding it. It's the Gundam AGE-1 Titus Master Grade. The Gundam Age series has been getting a lot of press and a lot of visibility this year since it is the 10th anniversary of that series having been produced and released, and we've seen a lot of different Gundam creators doing a lot of different content around these Age kits. So I thought I'd step into the fray, build the AGE-1 Titus, and see what all the hype is about. Every time I bring this kit up, people tend to go on about how much they want one or how much they love this design. Today I just want to take a look at this kit that I just built and talk about whether or not I think that this particular kit is worth all the hype. So we're going to do this in 4 parts like I do all of my reviews. We're going to talk about the build first, we're going to talk about the accessories, then we're going to talk about the articulation, and at the end I'll give my final thoughts on this kit and sort of wrap up whether or not I think the hype is worth it. For starters, let's go ahead and talk about the build. The AGE-1 Titus has a fairly simple and straightforward build. It doesn't have a lot of inner frame detail. It doesn't have a lot of gimmicks in the frame. There's minimal in the way of moving armor parts. There's some in the knees, but not a lot. Overall, it is a fairly straightforward build. I've heard it compared to high grades or RE100s. I think that's probably pretty apt based on what I have built of it so far. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to keep in mind. If you're coming into this kit looking for something complex, or if you're looking for something that's going to be a very over-the-top sort of build, think Strike Freedom or RX-78 3.0 or something along those lines, this is not going to be that kit. That is not what this is designed for. As you can see, there's a lot of part reuse in the torso and head from the AGE-1 Normal and AGE-1 Spallo molds, which is intentional given the lore of this kit being modular, so that you can swap armor pieces out, but that does mean that if you've built one of these, you've already built half of all the other ones. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but something to keep in mind. The rest of the parts that are unique to the Titus, being the legs and arms, are fairly simple. They're adequate for what they do. The only downsides that I have are the way the connection points are for the arms going into the shoulder armor and around the knees for the legs. They all just sort of peg together. They do not sandwich in securely, and it's all on polycaps. And given the tight nature of the joints, especially in the shoulders, when you try to pose this thing, you're going to end up pulling those arms and legs off on occasion. They don't break, but they do just come off while you're trying to pose them. It's the nature of the short pegs that they use for those and the fact that there is rotation at those joints, which I appreciate, but at the same time I do wish that it had been a much better connection so that you're not going to have those problems while attempting to pose this guy. Overall, I think the build of this kit is very adequate. It was enjoyable. There was nothing that gave me any trouble. It only took me about 5 hours to build, which is just an hour and a half to 2 hours longer than it normally takes me to build a high-grade kit. So at the end of the day, I think that this is a good beginner master grade build for someone who's never built anything more complex than a high grade. But if you're an experienced builder or someone who likes a lot of gimmicks or a lot of complexity in your builds, please stay away from the Age kits. All the ones that I have built up to this point have been very simplistic, and while that is not a bad thing, it is something that needs to be kept in mind. Moving on now to the accessories. This part of the review is going to be fairly short, because as you can see, all you really get for accessories with this kit are a couple of swappable hand parts for the outspread hands, the fist hands, and some straight-fingered hands for karate chop action, and you get the effects parts. These effects parts attach easily. The areas that they attach into look good even without the effects parts in them, which is a massive bonus, and you even get this nice little holder to keep them all on when they're not attached to the kit, save for the effect parts that go around the wrists for the beam punching action. These you don't get anything to store them on while they're not on the kit, but I doubt you're going to lose them either. They're not exactly prone to rolling away like these small cylindrical effects parts are for the energy spikes. And that's it. That's all you really get for accessories. They do their job, they're not overdone, though I do wish there had been some other accessories to go with this kit, but I understand there not being any given the nature of the lore that goes into this mobile suit. So for the accessories, they're cool, they're adequate, and if you really would like to, you can use the effects parts on other kits for thruster blasts or something along those lines. Getting into the articulation of the AGE-1 Titus now, there are pros and cons to the articulation on this kit. We're going to start with the pros and then go into the cons, because it's always nice to say something positive before you really start tearing something down. So the positives of this kit are that the elbows bend very nicely. You get really good bend out of the knees as well. The head is very articulate. The waist actually gives you a really good range of motion, especially for the era in which this kit was made. And you can really get some very dynamic punching poses, which is what this kit was made for, but that's about it. Let's go into the cons. The upper thighs are so thick that you can't bring this thing's legs together. It's always going to be in an A pose with the feet out at shoulder width. You just simply can't move them in closer. There's a rotating drum in the hip area to help with articulation, but given the bulk of the armor on the hips, you really can't do anything with it. This thing has thick thighs and it prevents a lot of the articulation in the upper legs. Moving into the lower legs, you have the same problem. The knee bend is fine, but once you get into the ankles and feet articulation, the thickness of the armor, especially these large plates on the back of the calves, prevents this thing from having any sort of rotation in the foot. So the foot is always going to be pointing the same direction as your calves and legs, which prevents a lot of really dynamic posing when it comes to the lower body. I really wanted to love this kit from an articulation standpoint, but those legs really are just a massive turnoff. The shoulders, likewise, massively armored, but they have far more range of motion than the legs do. The downside for the arms is, as I mentioned earlier, the way that the upper arm pegs to that shoulder armor is very short pegs, and that means that this thing is prone to having its arms come off while you're trying to pose it, combined with very stiff joints and polycaps inside of that shoulder armor, which will hold poses, but not necessarily be friendly towards creating new poses. Also, the shoulder joint itself, where it connects to the torso, is not as tight as the rest of the joints inside of the shoulder. So even if the shoulder joint can hold up the arm, the shoulder to torso connection has a hard time doing so. So overall, I'm going to have to knock this kit for its articulation, simply because the feet really disappoint me. They've got a lot of good connections in there. You would think with the number of joints that are actually in the feet, you could get something more dynamic out of them, but sadly you cannot, due to the fact that all the armor blocks any of the movement. The shoulder joints, again, have a lot of points of articulation inside of them, a lot of moving parts, but the whole is much less than the sum of its parts for this kit. Again, when you get it into a pose, it looks really cool. It looks really dynamic, it looks really fierce, but that's going to be the extent of it. You're not going to get it into a lot of different poses, you're going to get it into a few cool poses, and if you're fine with that, then there's no downside to this kit. If you're not fine with that and you want more posability out of your kits, you want some of those really high dynamic poses, this one is not going to be able to deliver for you. And now my final thoughts on the AGE-1 Titus Master Grade. I don't think it lives up to the hype. Every time I bring this kit up or post a picture of it somewhere or discuss it on Discord or Twitter or Facebook, there are always those people who will chime in with, oh hey, I'm really looking forward to this, or I really want to get my hands on one of those. I know Mecha Guy Kotsu did a review of this not long ago where he gave it a lot of praise. I think there are a lot of other people who have been doing kit reviews and painted builds of the AGE-1 Titus these days, so you've got a lot of visibility on this kit, but But for my money, given how rare this kit is, and given how expensive this kit is these days, I don't think that it's worth going out of your way to spend a lot of money to get your hands on it. Now, if they reprint this kit, and they reprint it for a reasonable price, if it drops back down to where it was originally retail, maybe 35 to 40 bucks, sure. Grab one, it's a fun build, you can get some cool poses out of it, the effects parts are nice, but at the current time and the current prices in the market, I would say avoid this kit almost like the plague. The high grades just got reprinted, pick one of those up, they're pretty cheap right now, go with the high grade. It's not going to be as detailed as this one. I don't think it comes with any of the effects parts. It may. I haven't done the high grade yet, but you're going to get probably the same level of build. You're going to get about the same level of articulation from what I've seen, and you're going to get it at a much cheaper price point. If you absolutely must have all of the Age Master grades, then nothing I'm going to say is going to change your mind on that. But if you're on the fence about it, or you've just seen other people doing videos about this thing and have thought to yourself, I'd really like to have one, really consider the amount that you're going to have to pay for it now as of the filming of this review versus all of the issues that I've pointed out with this kit. Am I upset that I got it? No, because I got it for a decent price when I found it on sale randomly for about 45 bucks. But had I paid more than that, then I probably would have been a bit disappointed in this kit just because of the articulation and how easily the arms and legs come apart when trying to pose it. So there's my final thoughts. I'm going to give this 3 out of 10 on the age scale, which is not a very good scale to go by. I don't do scores that make any sense, so that 3 out of 10 could mean pretty much anything. Take the content of the video more than the score. Make your decisions based on that and your own personal gut feeling. So until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for checking out this review. Please feel free to like, subscribe, comment on the video. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know where you think I can improve. And until next time, keep building.